So I'm happy to report that the Korean workers arrested by Donald Trump's ICE are now safely back home in Korea with their families. And I want to go over what's going on and give you the latest details. So first, this is actually a protest sign at the airport. And they wrote it in English because they want to make sure that the world can see this. It says, "We're friends, aren't we?" And it depicts an ICE agent wearing a Trump mask, so basically a Trumper, and carrying a bag of money, essentially portraying these people like criminals. This is the bag of money close-up. It has an American flag on it. Again, it's a bag of money, and it says, "I love Korea." So they're basically portraying the Trumpers here, right? The ICE people like criminals. I mean, you can see here. Again, we're friends, aren't we? And it's an ICE agent wearing a Trump mask. There's a lot of outrage, obviously, of course, in Korea, and several international companies are watching this story. Other countries are watching this story. People inside the USA are watching it. You're watching my channel, of course. We're talking about it. This is what The Guardian writes as a headline. South Korea outrage at 300 workers treated as prisoners of war in the U.S. raid. And they even understand the situation well. It says, there was a widespread anger across political spectrum in South Korea as the behavior of the U.S. authorities. And I can tell you guys, every country has their political divides, etc. But when it comes to something like this, like it unifies the nation to basically not like Trump, not like ICE, don't trust anything. And these are some of the headlines actually coming from Korean media. For example, Economic Daily says workers were being treated like prisoners of war. So conservative paper also said, it's called it a merciless arrest operation representing a breach of trust. More progressive side of the media was saying, is this what you do to an ally? And describing, how Koreans feel like they were backstabbed by Trump. But I also want to show you, the positive things to where people are reunited with their families. This was in the Wall Street Journal. Confusion, anger, relief. Korean engineer tells of a week in U.S. ICE detention. These are more pictures, and a lot of these people actually had families, and you can see them with the kids. And there was something I didn't know because it wasn't reported earlier. I just found out about today. One of the people that Trump's ICE arrested was actually pregnant. There was a pregnant woman among the people that were imprisoned, and I think when word get, when people will learn that more, I mean, you just realize how bad this stuff is. And we've seen this with other people that ICE has arrested before, separating families, arresting pregnant people. I remember seeing one before, not the Korean situation, but it was something maybe a few weeks ago where it was like there was a mother that was breastfeeding that they were arresting. It was just ICE people are just, the whole thing is shameful. And I think you guys know this for those of you who are watching. This is a protester here. The sign reads, asking us to build factories and invest, then arresting and detaining. Is this what an ally does? And for me, I'll just be frank, I get upset at this stuff. I always have to tell you guys, I'm an American citizen. I grew up in USA. My wife is Korean, right? She's a Korean national. And you want people to have good relationships around the world between countries, right? And that's the question I keep asking. Is like, is this how you treat allies, Trump? Is this how you treat allies, USA? The whole thing is shameful. Another headline, like a military operation, Koreans describe anxiety after U.S. immigration raid. And here's what it says from one of the workers. I am really relieved now. This was a detail detained. It was one of the engineers. I was so worried and couldn't sleep well for a week. And you guys know how it would be. It's just they're in awful conditions there. So they're happy to be home. And let me show you a little bit of the reunion part. So this was the plane when it landed. And the people were clapping. And they were saying words of encouragement when they came off the plane. I want to show you a little bit. And then again, this is just words of encouragement. Asking like, what do you want to do when you get off? And he's like, I want to eat, eat Korean food. I want to eat some, food, take a shower, this kind of things. They went right through the airport and then right onto a bus to reunite with family. There was fathers there, wives there. I want to show you guys a bit. Like this is, I think this guy was 70, greeting his son. So, and if you understand that the culture, family is really, really, really important. But it's, same for many countries. I don't want to say it's like only Koreans can't family. Like everyone does. You don't want to be separated from your family. Now, what they're showing here is this was actually the LG leadership was there. And see the headline, LG Energy Solution CEO vows full support for workers released from the U.S. detention. And they're giving a lot of support, actually. So let me show you a little bit what the CEO has to say. You can see it for yourself. So that's the CEO there.
LG 에너지 솔루션 측은 구금 노동자에 대한 심리 상담과 함께 건강 검진, 한 달 유급 휴가 등을 지원하기로 했습니다.
귀국하신 그 분들이 안정적인 복귀를 할 수 있도록 끝까지 지원을
So basically what he's saying is we're going to, support the workers to a best of our ability. We're not going to spare any expense. LG and Hyundai, I think I saw the estimate, it was like a $720,000 they spent to bring the workers home. If you had some sort of health issue, you're flying business and first class. And then the workers get, I think it was a 1 month off. They're going to get psychological counseling, because they went through this ordeal, and medical, checkups, make sure everything's okay. Basically, the companies are trying to take care of their workers here. And it's so hard to explain if for those of you, who say have bad experiences at companies in USA, etc. Now, I don't mean to say that every single company in Korea is going to treat you this way, but the good companies will. They'll take care of you. So, the whole thing is a terrible situation, but at least the CEO is standing up for the workers here, the best that they can. So again, it's like a month off, counseling, health checkups, make sure you're okay. And then, everything was paid on the way back. Free at last, Korean workers greet families, recount ICE ordeal. Let me read some of this stuff. Here's a quote. It says, "I didn't know when I would actually be able to leave. That was the hardest part." Asked about life at the detention center in Folkestone, Georgia, where they were held. It was the worst. Others complained about the quality of the food and said the water smelled of bleach. Right, so that's what people are saying. My wife said she heard that people are saying the food was garbage. Basically, that's what they said. I mean, it was a bad situation, and when you're in these situations, you miss your kids, you miss your family. You don't know what's going on, and then Trump was playing with them also before, because it looked like that Korea and USA had an agreement to release the workers, and then Trump delayed it because Trump wanted to ask them, one more time, would you like to stay? And this is like after effectively being, a week in prison. And then I said, do you want to stay and help us? And it's like, that's why I showed you guys that protest picture where it's, they portray Trump as like a thief, trying to get the money. And it's like, I love Korea, But I do want to point out something positive here. I know it's hard to find in news, but just listen to this. This is really interesting. From one of the people that were detained, he says, but over time, Cho added that the ICE officials' attitude toward the detained Koreans, quote, softened. Initially, they were very forceful and treat us like criminals, continued Cho. But as time went on, it felt like they were starting to realize maybe this isn't right. There was a kind of a subtle shift in how they treated us. So that was what one person said. I don't know what the other people said, but I think that's important to mention. And I mentioned this to my wife. Again, she's Yeji, her name is Yeji, but she's Korean, and she said, if you're going to detain these kind of workers, and you start to see like these people aren't dangerous, they're not going to hurt you, like they're not criminals, and maybe even the ICE people can start to figure that out. But this is something that for any kind of situation, if you want to make things better, like understanding exposure to other cultures, I'm just telling you guys, Koreans aren't your enemy in USA. I don't this Trump stuff is it's terrible. I be really frank, but it's not just the Koreans. Like there's a lot of different nationalities that do business in the USA, and they're not your enemy. That's what Trump does. He tries to create more enemies and just go. The Trump point of view is shoot first, ask questions later, kind of thing. It's no way to run a civilized society. I want to mention also when you read the description of the stuff, people, they described it as being like military operation when they were arrested. The helicopters came in and military vehicles. Someone else said because even though these people might speak some English, in these situations, it's so overwhelming. People, running in, speaking, effectively a foreign language to them, right? Because they're Korean and they got guns. Just imagine you're in another country, you're not in your home country. People show up with guns. helicopters, military type style vehicles, right? They're all wearing masks, etc. Just think how scary that would be. And it was a lot. This was like the massive raid that the Trumpers had put on. And, and they also mentioned too, there was no translators anywhere. So you don't know what's going on. And many of the workers thought like, what's the problem? Like we're all here legally. So what are you guys doing to us? The whole thing is absolutely crazy. And then when you hear about what the USA is now demanding, let me show you a little bit of the Korean news. I'll just say this. It shouldn't be shocking at this point that Trump demands the most ridiculous things. So this was on the news here, but I'll be the basic gist of it is that Trump wants the Koreans to invest, take all the risk, and then Trump wants to take all the profit. That's essentially what it boils down to. Let me show you this. So this is actually in our news. It's right here. So what they're talking about is the initial investment, and then after you get the initial money back. So the deal that's on the table that the Americans are trying to propose is that for the Koreans, when you do the initial investment, you'll get 90% until you reach that initial investment. So what I mean is like, let's say you put in, I don't know, $100 million or whatever, right? 100 billion or whatever, right? And then you will get most of those profits early on until you get your investment back. Okay, 90%, 90-10. After the original investment is paid back, then the Americans, the Trumpers, they want 90% of the profits. So how does that make any sense? Why would anyone want to sign this kind of deal? Do you guys see how stupid this is? So again, the idea is Trump saying, okay, invest in America, bring jobs to America, right? You'll get your initial investment back. So basically, right, you'll get that back faster, but then you won't really profit. We want 90% of the profits. You only get 10, and it doesn't make any sense. That's not a partnership whatsoever. And then they're threatening, oh, if you don't do it, we're going to do tariffs, etc. It's like that's what's like dealing with Trump. That's why I had to mention this stuff. It's probably not mentioned in the American news. And then they were talking about the deal that I guess they were talking with Japan. So the U.S. told Japan with the initial investment part, we'll split it 50-50 until you get your money back. After you get your money back, Japan, then the USA wants 90% of the profits. So that's the deal that they're floating around in the USA, and it's. I mean, would you take that deal? Of course not, right? I mean, and then they've been showing our public officials here in Korea. I think this is the chief of staff. He's just like, well, why would you sign that kind of deal? It's pretty ridiculous, right? Basically, that's what he's saying. And then this was some more quotes here. And this is part of understanding Korean culture. It's different than, say, the USA. He says, addressing reporters, the presidential chief of staff, Kang Hoon-sik, said he had come to offer words of encouragement. Quote, we did our best, but I'm sorry we couldn't bring them back to their homeland sooner. It's just so hard to explain. Like when you hear people that actually care, your political leaders actually care about the regular people. Trump would never talk about this kind of stuff. Trump would start calling names and blaming people, et cetera. And so here, like, it's a deep sense of shame. It's like we were trying our best to get them back sooner. We're sorry for any, extra day they had to spend in detention under Trump ICE. So the whole thing's frustrating, of course. And this is also what he said, again, from the Korean side. We're in an age of a new normal in dealing with the United States. The standard changes every time, and constantly here has to be a deal making, not only on tariffs, but it will also be the case with security issues. So how do you do business with Trump? It constantly changes all the time. That's what they're talking about, right? And what is the standard? And it's a different environment, here in Korea. You can see the way that people act, and there's the Trumpers, of course, and then the president of Korea presently was saying the same kind of stuff. Why would we sign something that doesn't benefit us? And then, he also mentioned, like, if we are going to sign something, at least make it, somewhat reasonable. And that's essentially what this all is Trump is an unreasonable person. He's untrustworthy. And I saw it all, here, seeing what the actual demands are. So talked about the money situation, and then they constantly change their mind. And then you hear about how, the Korean workers were treated in the USA. And then Trump and his people are saying, oh, come back and train the Americans. And it's like, it's ludicrous. And I also want to mention the point too as well is not only does the USA not have the specialists to put in the final, technical work to get the battery plant up and running, you also have, IP issues. You don't just want to just freely, hey, this is our technology. You can take it, Trump. We'll just give it to you all for free, right? So does that make sense? Like, you want to make sure you send people that you trust to set up certain things. And one way I was thinking about it is just imagine you're at work and you need to set up your computer, just for example. What you do, you usually pick up the phone, right? You call the IT comes and they set up your computer. What you don't do is, call the IT office and say, hey, give me your password so I can set up the computer myself. You don't do that. You guys know this, right? If anyone who's had a job, you exactly know what I'm talking about. There's an IT department that handles said thing. You don't ask for the IT password. But that's the kind of the Trumpers. They either they don't have any understanding of how business is done. They don't respect other people. They make unreasonable demands. The whole thing is absolutely insane. So that's what's going on. This could cost Trump, Georgia, Americans a lot of jobs. I mean, the idea was that they finished the plant, right? A lot of jobs are going to be created. So I think that's all in jeopardy as now the president here in Korea is like, you've put all of this stuff at risk. So that's my thoughts on this. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you on the next video.